Afternoon, it's Jordan from P&P Campers. I'm just going to do your handover video on your Bailey. It's an autograph based on the 160 Peugeot Boxer chassis. Just double check, it's an autograph 75-2. So under the bonnet you've got your washer fluid over on the left hand side, power steering fluid, engine coolant and brake fluid. You can get to the tops of these just by taking this little cover off just here. Then got your engine oil from this cap just here, and the engine oil dipstick is the red topped one just down here at the front of the engine. Over towards the right hand side we've got your air filter inside this box. There's a couple of air conditioning pipes just here. If you want to jump start this vehicle, your positive terminal sits underneath this little cover here, and your earthing point is this one just here. So it does say there only for jump start. So you've got positive down there, earth just here. The reason for that is that your engine battery in these chassis actually sits under the floor in the cab, just in front of the passenger seat. So you can get to it nice and easily from in there, but it's easier obviously for jump starting to be under the bonnet. You've got your two chassis plates here. So this is the original one, so from Fiat, Peugeot. That's the one that the van was built with. But this one here that says Alco on it is the one that you want to actually go off. So it'll be very slightly different to this one, but this is the one that you need to go off. Oh, and the paint code for this particular vehicle was here, Fiat 210, which is actually the same colour that they used to use on the older models as well, but they've started using it again on the newer ones. On this near side we've got your diesel and AdBlue filling points. The AdBlue one does just literally undo by hand, and the diesel one you will need your ignition key to open up. Inside the passenger door we've got the bonnet release handle, and as I was saying, the battery sits underneath that little cupboard there underneath. Tyre pressures. If you aren't used to motorhomes, this is correct. Sometimes it looks a little bit crazy if you're just used to cars at sort of 30 or 40 psi, but this is correct. That is the type of pressure you need in these camping tyres. Obviously you've got the habitation door just here, which does open up on its strut up there and holds itself open nice and firmly. The next locker is your gas locker. It does say here, periodically treat rubber seal with silicone spray. So that's really important to remember. That's the same on any motorhome. Any rubber seals around any of these lockers, so you'll have one around this one, around the toilet locker, even around the actual habitation door as well. If you do manage to get yourself a can of silicone spray, it's really helpful. It just stops it essentially stops this from getting dry, and then stops any water from being allowed into the locker there, which eventually causes kind of damp problems and things like that. So really important, keep on top of that if you can do. The gas locker itself is pretty simple. All you need to know really is anti-clockwise round to the left turns the bottle on, clockwise round to the right turns it off, and you've got a little button just here, which I don't know if you can see, a little green button just there. When you turn this bottle on for the first time, press and hold on the button there for a couple of seconds and then let go of it. That's basically just a little pressure thing. It just basically stops anything. It's all to do with like the crash sensor, I think. So when you first turn it on, you might find sometimes that you won't get any gas coming through to the inside until you press and hold that button in for a few seconds. That is quite normal. The hookup point is this one just here. You then got a couple of external sockets and an external gas point as well. So these are all factory fitted. This vent just back here is your Aldi heating vent. So I've got the Aldi heating on at the moment on heating only, so I haven't got the hot water on, but I've got it on heating. So you can see there, condensation forming at the bottom of that and hot air pumping out down the bottom. So that is completely normal. Condensation will form like this and will drip down no matter what obviously the colder it is, the more you'll get, but that will happen all the time. You can't do anything about that. So I just thought I'd let you know that's completely normal as well. At the back we've got your bike rack there, tow bar, and the factory fitted reversing camera. So I think it's a Dometic camera, which is obviously, you know, a really nice high quality camera, and screen in the cab as well. Nice LED rear lights at the back there. So I think that's about it for the back. The next locker along is your toilet cassette locker. So this is a Thetford toilet cassette. This is the later model, as opposed to the yellow ones that they used to be. Again, like I said, just keep on top of this rubber seal on this door as well. These are a bit more typical to actually leak or allow water to leak through, so just keep that in mind. You know, if you are going to lubricate some of them, make sure you definitely do this one. On the subject of silicone spray as well, if you can, when you're doing all of that sort of stuff, it's really important to lubricate this lip seal in here. So basically how it works is when you push this toilet cassette in, most of the time the toilet cassette's like this. When you push the cassette in, it pushes this flap back to about here, and then when you open the flap up in the toilet to actually flush it, all that happens is this bit here turns. So it just opens that and allows whatever's in the bowl there to go inside that. So it's really important to keep this little rubber seal here lubricated. We've done it here as part of the habitation check, obviously, but again, what happens is if you don't lubricate that seal, when you push this cassette back in, this part won't move. It'll just stay stuck here, and then it'll eventually break that, which is then just a case of replacing the whole thing. So that's why you need to do that. You've got a freshwater flush on this one, so you haven't got to worry about any separate flush fluids. And the only other thing I want to talk to you about is, or tell you about, is when you empty it out from here, hold down the little orange button there at the back whilst you're doing it, and it'll just basically relieve a little bit of pressure as you do it. Down underneath here we've got your wastewater drain off point, so you just literally turn that 90 degrees and that will stop any of that coming out. That's the wastewater. These two vents just here are for your fridge. This one has got the cover on it at the moment, so if you are going to use this sort of properly for a bit longer than I am, you need to take this cover off. So it just allows air to come through here, up the back and out through here. But just for the sake of showing you it working, I don't really need to take it off. This is the freshwater inlet point, so there is a point in there for you to plug that in with. I will point that out to you when we get in there. So that's what that is. That's the freshwater inlet. And underneath here again, we've got your freshwater drain off point. And again, you just literally turn the little handle there at 90 degrees and it will all come pouring out. So that is that. So in the cab, try not to make it messy, it's been cleaned. In the cab, got a really nice high spec cab. There's not much in here that this, in fact I don't know if there's anything that you can add, to be honest with you, but anyway, so you got the factory fitted, this is the sort of newer style head unit here, where it's kind of like a double din size, and you know, it's not touchscreen or anything, but it is sort of nice and modern looking. Air conditioning from this switch just here. You have got the sort of off-grid kind of driving modes here as well. These are all to do with traction control, and this one is to do with your cruise control, I think. But not many of them have this, so I'm not completely clued up on what these buttons specifically do, but I'm certain this one here is to do with the ESP traction control sort of thing. Hazard lights, 6-speed manual gearbox, where reverse is lift up at the back, over and up to the top left. Lights and indicators from the left hand stalk, and your cruise control handle is just down here. You got your steering wheel functionality, and you can also, I think, hook your phone up to all this sort of center console here and answer and decline calls from there as well. The Dometic screen, like I said, really nicely fitted. Like I said, I would imagine that's probably factory fitted, so that's why it looks quite nice and neat. You've got your electric adjusting mirrors, as you'd expect really on this one. If you wanted to check any codes or anything that comes up on the dash, you basically take this little cover off just here, and your point for checking in there is just basically in there at the bottom. So if you did need to plug into the vehicle to check anything over, that's where it is. So again, try not to make it too messy. Just come through to the back, shut this door. So in the locker there, I had the gas on already, so that I can show you a couple of bits working. So I'm going to start up here. As soon as you walk in the door, you've got your control panel above your head. It is quite high up, so it's going to be a bit awkward for me to sort of hold this and show you at the same time, but I'll try my best. Right, so as soon as you come in, turn the power switch on. Once you have turned the power switch on, you should then have power to anything you want after you've selected them on this little control panel here. So I've turned that on already. I can then flick through these buttons here to show me my levels. So voltage in the leisure battery and how many amps is being drawn, which battery it's actually using, so you want to leave that on leisure. Internal temperature, settings, external temperature, fill internal tank. So if you wanted to fill the water tank up from the outside with the point that I was showing you, which is with this fitment just here, so you just basically plug that in and drop the pump into whatever you've got there to fill the water up with, which will probably be this. Fill the internal tank basically just then allows you to, if we just get to that again, basically just press that button there and then it'll send power to that socket outside and start drawing the water in. You will get to grips with that really quickly. It is not as kind of difficult as it sounds. The big plus to having this is that you don't actually have to have a hose right there, ready to reach your van in order to fill the thing up. It means that you can fill this up wherever you want, roll it to wherever you need to put it, right next to the vehicle, and then drop that into that. So it just means that you can get water from anywhere and still get it to your vehicle. So that's why they do that. So we carry on. So that's where we were. We've then got wastewater level. So that's empty because I've got the wastewater drain off open, as you saw it outside. And the freshwater level, 21%. So we've got about a fifth of a tank of fresh water in the tank. And then back to the main screen. You then got the water pump switch, internal lights. So now that if you leave all the switches on, all the lights will come on as soon as you turn that switch on, and your awning light switch. So now we should have light up there. Okay, so that's all pretty simple stuff. You just basically, it's just giving you all your levels, lights, awning light, pump. All right, so that's the main control panel up there. The one next to that is your Aldi heating system, or heating and hot water system. So on this home screen now, all the time that it's like this, you can see the temperature that it's basically made on the inside. So internal temperature there, 15.5 degrees. The top left hand side has a little sort of, this little one here. That is telling you that the fan is running, or the pump's running, sorry, and it's pumping the water around to the radiators. And this one here basically means that the heating is on because you've got a little thermostat inside a house. If I press menu, it'll bring up this little screen here. This little light just here tells us that the gas is being used on the boiler at this time. If I had a mains cable plugged into the vehicle, I could choose 1, 2, or 3 kilowatts. I wouldn't recommend using 3 kilowatts on the system whatsoever, if possible. It draws far too much power. If you imagine, if you went to a campsite and paid for a 10 amp plug to plug into, or a socket to plug into, you've got 10 amps to use. As soon as you hook up, your battery charge is going to be using about half an amp. And if you select 3 kilowatts up there on your Aldi heating system, it draws about 10 amps. So the very moment that you choose 3 kilowatts, you're going to trip the pole that you're plugged into if it's not rated to sort of 16 amps or something. All right, so if I was you, I would leave it down on 1 or 2 kilowatts if that's possible. If you don't have access to the mains or you don't want to use it at all, just leave it on the gas. The top 2 here, the top one is, as I showed you a minute ago, that's your heating symbol. And all I've done really there, sorry about my shaky hand, all I've done is selected what temperature I wanted to reach. So I could turn that up to 24 if I really wanted to. I think it goes up to 30, but all that will happen now that I've selected 24 and I've got the gas symbol switched on, is the Audi heating system down there will basically just run and pump the water around to the various radiators that are dotted around the vehicle. So there'll be one there behind the bed. There's one in the bathroom just here. There'll be some behind the seats up the front. So that's what these little covers are for. And actually that's really hot already. So that's what that is. I'll put that back on in a minute. There's one down here. There's one down behind the other seat. So unless you've had an Audi heating system before, you probably don't, you probably aren't too sort of clued up with them. But it really is as simple as that. It essentially works like a household heating system, where it lights up, heats up the water that's inside of it. The pump pumps the water around through it and then through to the radiators. And you've got your little reservoir here for the Audi heating system. This is the coolant reservoir essentially for the heating system. So like I said, when you set your temperature, whether you have it on gas or electric, whereas at the moment I've obviously got it on gas, like I said, set your temperature, that will light up, and as soon as you do that, it'll just start pumping the water around. I've had it on for about half an hour now, and like I said, this is actually already pretty hot down here. So the van, when I started, I'm pretty sure it was sat at about 12 or 13 degrees. So within half an hour, we've gone up about 5 degrees. So it's really nice and effective. They tend to use the Audi heating systems on the much bigger vehicles, like sort of like huge Bürstners and Heimers and things like that quite often have the Audi heating systems, but so it works really nicely in a vehicle of this size. So that's how you do the heating. If you want to do the hot water, this one just here that has a little shower symbol next to it, you basically just press up 1 or up 2. And it'll just basically start using a slightly different part of the boiler down there and heat the water up that's inside of it. So for the minute, I don't actually want any hot water, I just want the heating. So I'm gonna leave it like that. So hopefully that makes sense. Before you start using the boiler on either gas or electric to heat the actual water up, there is one thing that you need to do. In order to know that the boiler's actually got water inside of it, there's 2 things you need to do. You need to come over to the boiler itself and have a little look. You've got a little yellow tab down there. I know it's a little bit awkward to get to, but there's a little yellow tab down there. If that's laying down flat like it is now, that means that the boiler will accept water and it won't drain it out onto the floor. If you lift that tab up, any water that's inside of that boiler will just drain straight out onto the ground. So the reason that's there is when it comes to the winter sort of time of the year, if you're not going to be using the vehicle and you know it's going to get really, really cold, you need to lift that tab up there and drain the water out. If the water that's inside of that boiler freezes, it will expand and it will just create endless leaks all over the place. So it's really important to drain that out in the winter if you're not going to be using the vehicle and keeping it warm. So you need to make sure that that's in the position where it is now, and then just come to the control panel here, assuming you've got water in the fresh tank, turn the pump on and just pull the tap. So you get a little bit of air like this if there's not quite enough water in the boiler. Okay, so that's a good example actually. So what happens there, because the boiler isn't quite full of water, I got air basically at the tap rather than water. So The reason for that is, if I just quickly explain it, you've got the fresh tank down here somewhere, and any tap in the whole vehicle that has a cold side, the water just gets basically drawn straight through that, straight through the pump and to the tap. So the cold side of things is really, really simple, straight through the pump, straight to the tap. Whereas the hot side of things has to come from the fresh tank, through the pump, through the boiler, and then to the hot side of the tap. So it has to go kind of from here to the back to there. So that's why sometimes the hot water can take a little bit longer to actually pressurize and come all the way through. But until that water starts coming through the hot tap there's no way of knowing that that boiler is actually full. If you do start getting water coming through the tap, it means that that boiler is full up and it's allowing the water to come back through to the tap. So I hope that makes sense, but that is the only way to do it. So that is just something to keep on top of. If you do empty out your boiler, make sure that you fill it back up again before you use it up there, basically. So just very, very briefly again, heating at the top, just set your temperature. Hot water, add 1 or 2 to get it to start. Electric on or off, 1, 2 or 3 kilowatts, but like I said, maybe just leave it on 1 or 2. And your gas symbol, so that just basically turns the gas on and off. So actually, if I turn this gas symbol off now, the whole boiler is completely off. If the gas symbol's off and the electric one's off, the boiler is not doing anything. No matter what you do, you know, I could set the hot water to 2, but it's not actually going to do anything until I turn the gas back on. Okay, so I'm going to turn that off for now. There you go. So that is how the Aldi heating system works. Cupboard up there. If I'm honest with you, I will just share with you, when we first got the vehicle in, it had, just in case you ever wonder, it did actually have a gas strut between here, like the door's got here. It had a gas strut like that. Now we took it off because when we first got the vehicle, the only issue we could see with the entire thing was the fact that this cupboard here, unfortunately you can kind of see on here, it was just completely scratching up against this cupboard here, and we couldn't work out why it was doing it, because all of the hinges were fine, everything was fine, but it turned out that the gas strut that was on it was like way too hard, and it doesn't actually need one whatsoever. These hinges are specifically made to open these cupboards up like it is now and hold it open. So why it actually had a gas strut on it, I have no idea, but that's why those little bits are there. We don't want to leave holes in everything and things. So I just thought I'd explain that to you. It works perfectly fine without it. I just do not understand why. I don't know why it had it in the first place, but that's why that's there. So like I said, all of the vents just here are for your Aldi heating system, and they're essentially just little radiators that the hot water gets pumped around to. So the next appliance is probably this cooker and hot ring system. So it's a Thetford system. You'll see that the Thetford, the grill and oven down here is also Thetford. You've got this little button just here, which is your ignition. This is the ignition for the grill, oven, and the 3 burners at the top. So it's not just the ignition for this system here, it's actually also the ignition for these burners. So you've got a little diagram telling you exactly which one does which. So you can see this one here does the bottom left one. So essentially just light it up like any household cooker, but use this button down here to light it up. If you have access to a hookup cable and the hookup's plugged in, you can use this hot ring over the back. So you essentially just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6. When the hookup's plugged in, when you turn this on, this little red light should come on, just so that you can, you know, just basically tells you that it's on. Only other thing I want to tell you or ask you about is just please don't put this glass lid down. If you've just lit one of these up and it's been on for a little while, or you've been using it, when you turn it off, do not put this lid straight down. If you put the lid straight down like that, it's got a little symbol there saying don't close it when the flame's on. But it's just as important, if you close the lid straight down after it's just been turned off when it's still really hot, the action of the top being cold and hot underneath will shatter this. You know, I've seen it so many times. They just shatter. they are hardened glass, but you know, they're not sort of made for that. So if you just make sure that you leave that up until this is all cooled down, that would be good. So next to appliances, we've got your microwave at the top just here. So this microwave is obviously just 240 volt only, so this won't work unless you have a hookup plugged in. The fridge, so it's a nice size fridge. The freezer compartment is inside in here. So it's nice and simple how to actually use it. At the moment, I've got the fridge lit up on gas. I can tell you that because I've got it down here on the gas symbol, and the little orange bar is right up in the green. If I turn this off, if you watch what happens there, orange bar goes straight down to the white again, and you can straight away know that is now not lit anymore. So that little orange bar is basically just telling you how, you know, how hot the flame is at the bottom. So if I want to light that back up again, I go back down to the gas, and then you've got the ignition button here, so you can probably hear it. So all I need to do, select gas, push in on here and the igniter at the same time, and you can see there straight away the orange bar going right up into the green. I can now let go of that and just make sure that that still stays up there in the green. Once you've let go of this, make sure it stays up. If it does stay up, you can just leave it, and after a couple of hours this fridge will be cold. So that's how you use it on the gas. If you want to use it on the mains electric, if you've got a hookup plugged in, like I said, go up to this one just here. And if you've pre-cooled the fridge and you're going to start your engine up and drive to wherever you're going to go, switch down to 12 volt just here, and that will basically just keep the fridge cold whilst you're driving along. The 12 volt doesn't do anything at all until you physically start the engine up. So now that I've selected this here, this is not doing anything, okay? Even though I've got the control panel on and I've got all the lights on, this doesn't do anything until you start the engine. The reason for that is, when you start the engine up, the alternator charges up the engine battery, just like any car or van does. You've then got a split relay, which splits that power and sends it 1 to the leisure battery and 2 to the fridge. So that all the time your alternator is charging up the engine battery, you're also getting a really good charge in your leisure battery, and also it allows you to keep the fridge cold whilst you're driving. You need that really because obviously you can't have a hookup plugged into the vehicle as you drive, and you shouldn't have your gas on. So really you need to have that there anyway. So pre-cool the fridge before you leave, either via the gas or the electric, and then just switch over to 12 volt when you leave. And then obviously switch back to one of the other two when you actually stop. So that is the fridge, nice and easy. In the wardrobe here, we've got your tilt and turn TV aerial at the top. So you basically just undo that nut at the top there, push it up, move it to wherever you need to. And your TV aerial booster there doesn't actually need to be on at the moment. The standalone table is in here as well, so that's got its own legs that just fold out, and you can, you know, usually just put that there between the two front seats, the dinette sort of seats there. You've got various bits and pieces in here, just, you know, spares that the previous owner has left. Same for underneath the bed. We would normally get rid of a fair amount of this sort of stuff, but it's all very, very useful stuff, so we thought we'd leave it. So you've got the awning winder, you've got some chocks there for the tyres to put under the wheels. You've got some levelling chocks here, Malenko ones, which aren't cheap. Various bits and pieces, like I said. So you just, really, these are all things that you would have to get anyway. So we thought we'd just leave them in here. So I'll just put the bed down now. So the TV, obviously that all works. Got power to that, and the one here as well. The last thing then really is probably the bathroom. So it's a really nice, neat sort of bathroom, nice design. Really nice bright LED lights in here as well. The lights themselves work from this switch here. Also, I don't know if you noticed it, but I thought that was quite cool. Anyway, so right, the toilet, like I said, I've shown you how to use it from the outside, like the cassette side of things. really simple how you actually use these. So you've got this little blue button here, that is your flush fluid, and then when you actually get the flush fluid going around, you can then empty it out into the cassette from this little bar here. Open, you can close, and that is all you have to do. It really is as easy as that. The shower, I'm not going to show you that because I'll get soaking wet, but it's essentially just hot and cold. The hotter you get the water in the boiler, the less you have to use to actually get a decent hot shower. So, you know, if you can put it up to 2 on the hot water side of things, it's probably best so that you can get a bit more out of it. Otherwise, it's all pretty simple stuff, really. It's all, you know, the main thing is really just getting the grips of the appliances. Hopefully the Aldi heating system explanation made sense. But yeah, the beauty with the Aldi heating systems really is the fact that when you heat them up, when you heat all these radiators up, like we've done already, I mean, I turned it off about probably 10 minutes ago now, and it's still warm. You know, these radiators are still hot. So that's the big plus side to the Aldi systems, is the fact that when like, as opposed to the Truma Combi systems, which are also great, but when you turn those off, it does just stop. The heating just stops, you know, immediately. Whereas when you turn these Aldi heating systems off, the radiators stay hot for, you know, about half an hour usually. It's exactly the same as a heating system at home, where, you know, if you turn your heating off at home, the radiators aren't just going to stop being hot instantly. It's exactly the same. So yeah, so I think I've pretty much covered everything I can. If there's anything you think I've missed out or anything you'd like going over again, just let us know. But I don't think I have. Let me just double check these great big cupboards. Okay, so there's only one other thing then. So your Truma the battery controller, solar controller. So you've got a solar panel up on the roof. Again, having the Dometic, Truma, these things would normally be like a cheap version, really. So like the reversing camera and the battery, the solar regulator there would normally be something else like Victron, which, you know, still a really good brand, but this hasn't really had any expense spared, you know, and it just sort of shows by having these appliances like this. So the solar battery controller, so essentially what this does is you've got a couple of wires here. These two in the middle come directly down from the solar panel, and then you've got 4 more wires going off to the engine and the leisure batteries. So it's a duo controller, and what that means is both engine and leisure get charged up from the solar panel rather than just the leisure, which is a real plus side. So that's there. You haven't got to do anything with that, just leave that alone and that'll just do its job all the time, as long as there's a bit of sunshine outside. Okay, so if there's anything you think I've missed out, anything you want going through again, just let us know. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you soon to collect your van. Thanks very much.